Georgia Fields, welcome to Australian Musician.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm wondering what your influences were growing up. Who were the artists that you aspired to be like?
Oh, I grew up in quite a diverse musical diet. The classic Beatles, Beach Boys, Motown, Madonna, the music that my parents loved. But, like every 90s kid, I got into grunge. Unlike kids that were into grunge, I was also into Mariah Carey. So I think the main thread through all of those influences would be melody and song. So, whether it was Nirvana or Mariah's Dream Lover, if it was a good song, it hooked me in.
So at what point did you think, okay, I'm going to be an artist?
I wanted to be an artist from a young age. I think I've got two small kids now. I've got an 8-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, which is nearly 8 actually. And you just notice that kids just don't take it for granted. They just assume that being an artist is something that's available to them. I grew up in a musical family. My parents were in a band before I was born. They met in a band called the Ferrets, which is an Australian band from the 70s. I remember as a teenager, my mum getting recognised occasionally, which was always quite odd to me. Seeing music as part of life made me think it was possible. And, when I started writing songs, I just thought I would follow this path. I think wasn't until I started and have been self-managed this entire time through the last 14 years that I realised what a hefty job it is. Not just the creating of the music, but all the admin and promo and bookings and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Your first album came out over 10 years ago now. What do you know about recording now that you didn't the first time you went into a studio?
Oh, what a great question. The first time I did my first paid vocal recording session when I was about 9 or 10. So I've been in the studio, I've been in studios before. So being in the studio wasn't exactly foreign to me. But managing, I guess, my emotions and my feeling and my nerves was something that I hadn't grown into just yet. And I feel like with my third album that's coming out soon, it feels like, even though I've been in the studio a lot, that this was the first time that I really settled into really enjoying it. Yeah. And knowing how to get the most out of my energy, particularly with vocals, because that's a mind game. It's a minefield, recording vocals. Yeah. If anyone watching is a vocalist and has been into the booth, they would know.
Yeah, the album is called Hiraeth. It's out November 17. Tell me about the title.
Title is a Welsh word, and I do want to be upfront that I'm not Welsh. So it's a word that doesn't translate directly to English or any other language. And it's a special word for Welsh people, and it's understood to mean a profound longing for a home that you can't get back to anymore because it doesn't exist anymore. It's also connected to the grief or longing for the lost places of your past. And I discovered that word shortly after I became a mother and was undergoing that huge personal shift. It's not just a physical shift of, labor and breastfeeding. It's also an identity shift. And it's a huge personality shift. So that word really connected to me then, of thinking of my previous life as a land that I couldn't get back to anymore because it doesn't exist. And I feel like that word, when I talk to people about it, it seems to ring true for a lot of people, that longing for a place in time that you can't get back to, but you have a very special part in your heart for. So I guess the album, speaking broadly, is written about longing, and there's a lot of themes of home and belonging and parenthood, but it's pop music, so it's, you know, it's songs.
There are 8 tracks on the album. Were there others that didn't make the cut that you were playing around with?
There are a few, yeah. I think there's 10 tracks on the album, all up. Yeah, there was a few, and it's interesting. It's not till you really get in the studio sometimes that you know which ones are going to work and which ones didn't. There are a few that I really thought were going to be big songs for me for this album project, which didn't end up coming together in the studio. Like, just when we tried it, didn't feel right. And also, I guess it depends on your collaborator as well. So I was really lucky and so happy to be working with a producer called Josh Barber, who's a drummer and a multi-instrumentalist, and as well as being a producer. So it was good to really put the songs in his hands and to, you know, really value his input in which songs went together as well. And so, yeah, we kind of worked together to settle on those 10 songs, yeah.
Yeah. The notes say that the strings and woodwind arrangements were done by yourself. Did you have formal training in arranging?
I had some training. I'm mostly self-taught. I did a music degree, and there was a semester of arranging. So it was, I guess, a crash course, and then teaching myself. But I've always loved chamber pop. I've always loved that, you know, that mini orchestral sound of the classic 60s pop, like your Beach Boys and the strings on the Beatles. So from my first album, I really was working with arrangements for woodwind, strings, and brass. And I also played cello for in high school for 5 years, very badly, but enough to learn what the instrument's capable of and get an idea of the palette of sounds, which informs my arranging.
The current single is In My Blood. Tell me about that song. How did that come about?
I wrote that one during one of the lockdowns, actually. Yeah, I started writing it and I ended up finishing it because I was asked to play a concert and show music that I had finished during lockdown. And of course, there was lots that I'd started during lockdown, but being a mother of 2 and, you know, with everything that was going on, my husband working full-time, teaching music from Zoom, it's a bit of a hectic time. So it really was that deadline, love a deadline of that concert that helped me finish it off. But it's inspired by questioning the line between desire and compulsion, and questioning whether it's nature or nurture. Like a lot of people, I returned to some not so healthy coping strategies during the lockdowns. A little bit too much red wine, a little bit not enough steady meals. So I was wondering, you know, what's that all about? So I guess that's the theme of the song.
The track Water to Water is accompanied by just one electric guitar. Did you try other versions of that with more instrumentation, or was it always going to be that way?
It was always going to be that way, that one. Yeah, that's a song that's very dear to my heart. I wrote it after my experience of losing a pregnancy. And I think that the solitary experience of that, you know, I had some family around me during that time and some friends, but at the end of the day, you grapple with those big things such as loss and death. And in the end, it's really your own journey to deal with. So I feel like that was a big part of the choice for it to be just a solo song, not just a solo song, a solo song. Yeah,
Yeah. Is that you playing guitar on that?
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was the guitar that you used?
I have a copy of an EG, which I actually inherited through a family member. I feel very lucky to have it. It's not a fancy name guitar, but I just love it, and it just feels right when I play it. So yeah, it was just that hollow body with the F holes guitar into an amp with a mic on it in a big church hall.
Yeah.
Pretty simple setup, but worked for me.
Yeah. It's a great effect, actually. In fact, most of your recordings, there's a minimalist approach to the instrumentation. You kind of only apply what the song needs and nothing more. Where does that sense of economy come from? Who are your influences in that way?
Oh, I feel so flattered by that question, because that's something I've really been working on. I think naturally I tend to be a maximalist, Who is the designer? Is it Chanel that says you should take off like 2 accessories when you go out? Whereas I'm like, put 5 on, big earrings, you can see from my jumper, more color, more everything. But for this record, I was really inspired by Solange and Sarah Blasco. Solange's album, A Seat at the Table, and Sarah Blasco's Depth of Field. They've got such great restraint, and there's areas of production where there's maybe only 2 or 3 elements going at once, and yet the song sounds so full, which I think is testament to their performances and arrangements on those albums. But that was something that I really wanted to lean into with this record, and consciously head in that direction with Josh, the producer. And I said that to him on our first meeting, that I really wanted to not necessarily have it minimalist, but have it really considered, and create those spaces, those opportunities for space in the songs.
Yeah. Was the track order important to you?
Oh yeah, very important and tricky to nail down. So I know some artists probably settle on a track order earlier on, maybe. Actually, I don't know whether that's true. But for me, it's always been something that of a puzzle to solve once all the arrangements and the sounds and characters of the songs are in place. But I knew that I wanted to start with Find Your Way Back and end with I Saw It Coming. So then it was just how do I weave them from one to the other?
Yeah. You acquired some government funding for the album through Creative Victoria. What did that allow you to do?
So I was lucky to receive funding through Creative Victoria and the Australia Council for the Arts. So the Australia Council for the Arts allowed me to record the album, and sort of, I guess, their component of funding was to do with the actual making of the album, which I'm so grateful for. And then Creative Victoria provided support for the release. So to be able to work with a publicist, and as well as the digital strategist as well. This album has been, it's coming at a critical time for me, I guess, in terms of my career progression, because I'm sort of emerging, but I've been around for a while, so I'm almost established. So having that funding from Creative Victoria means that I can think really strategically about how to connect with the people who are going to respond to the album, and really build my audience. But I put in a lot of grant applications, 5 in total over a number of years. So there was a point where I thought maybe it wouldn't happen, and I'm so glad that I pursued it further, and grateful to those funding bodies for coming to the party.
We spoke about the guitar that you used. I just want to talk about some other tools that you use in your music making. I believe you use an omnichord in your music making occasionally.
Yeah, features on the record quite a bit.
Yeah. So how did you come across the omnichord?
I remember, I think I might have seen one. Actually, I remember now. There's a band from Sydney called Holidays on Ice, and they were using an omnichord, and I saw it and was like, wow, that is so cool. If anyone's not sure, if you haven't heard of an omnichord before, it's like a zither or an auto harp, but crossed with a Casio keyboard. I wonder if I think I might actually have it here. Hold up. I was rehearsing with this last night, actually. So it's got like a strumming pad, and then you can also tune up some chords as well. It's a lot of fun, and the reason I have one is my then boyfriend, now husband. Listen up, fellas, if you want to nab the girls, you buy them an omnichord for Christmas. You surprise them. We've been together only a few months, and now we're married with 2 children. So that's the secret to our success: omnichords.
I believe you also use some pedals in your music making.
That's right. Yeah, I started working with loop pedals after, or I just have the one actually. I have a Boss RC30, which is just a 2-channel looper, which means that you can put as many sounds as you like on one side and then another side, and then either have this one going or this one going, or them going at the same time. I didn't really use the looper during the album recording, but I used it during the writing sessions. And so that, of course, was going to inform how the songs on the album sound. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You've got some dates coming up playing the album tracks. Has it been a fun album to translate to a live setting?
It has, yeah. Some of the songs I already had solo loopy versions of. Some of the songs I'm not using loops for at all, such as Water to Water, which we spoke about earlier. But others I'm trying to reverse engineer. So I've, Josh and I've created the recorded arrangements, and then I'm trying to figure out how to play them solo, which is always a lot of fun.
Yeah. Something else that you're involved with is Motherload, an online community for musicians who are mothers. Tell me about that.
That started in 2020. It had been on my mind for a few years, actually, just wondering how I could democratize and share some of the conversations that I have with other musician mothers in green rooms and backstage, or at gigs, or whenever you see them. Or, how are you managing this? And, oh, did you put childcare in the grant budget? And, oh, did the festival give you a spot to breastfeed? And are they family friendly? And all the other questions that you ask each other. How can we share that? So that's what Motherload's about. It's sort of about connecting mothers in the music industry together, as well as sharing resources. But I have been doing interviews with other musician mothers through the year, but I've had to kind of slow down on that while I've been working on my record. But I'm looking forward to amping that up next year.
Yeah. If money and time were no issue, what would a Georgia Fields show look like?
Oh, I would love it to be something that is very deliciously comfortable. One day I would love to do a show in the planetarium with a dome roof and projections. I love going to theatre style shows. I love being able to sit and immerse myself in really beautiful sound. So that's something that I love, trying to create that experience with my live shows. Less of a raucous dive bar party and more of a beautiful listening environment party.
So what's the grand plan for Georgia Fields?
Oh, world domination. My own range of herbal teas, my own perfume range. I'm not sure. I would love to be able to keep making albums and keep connecting with people, keep playing shows. I miss touring so much during the lockdowns and during this time that we're sort of still negotiating our way out of, this pandemic time. So really, I just want to be playing music and making more records. That's my goal, and see wherever that magic road leads.
Yeah. Okay, well, the album Hiraeth is out on November 17. Georgia Fields, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.